Hi, I'm Paulina.
Hi, I'm Bricia.
And we're sisters, friends, daughters, wives, and business owners.
And we're just following our dreams, working to be a better version of ourselves every day. All right. And we're also moms.
Welcome to the Super Mama Sisterhood.
Welcome to the show, Angelica.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Hello. No, it is a pleasure to have you to speak on such a monumental issue that our country is going through. Let's talk a little bit about yourself first, how you got started with CHIRLA. And really, what was it about your growing, the way that you grew up that really made you want to do this?
Mm-hmm. Well, I started at CHIRLA in 1995 as a volunteer. And the reason I decided to volunteer for CHIRLA was because it was an organization that was founded to advance the rights of immigrants like myself. So I came to the United States when I was about 4 years old to be reunited with my mom and my dad, who had already come to the United States. I came with my little sister, who was 3. And we arrived in Pasadena, California, and all I knew was that we were going to go north to be with my mother. I had a faint memory of my father, but I certainly remembered my mom, and that we were going to be reunited with them. So that's what happened. We were an undocumented family. My dad was undocumented, my mother as well, and both my sister and I. And there were everybody in our family. There wasn't necessarily a sense that there was a path for us that was a legal path. Mm-hmm. And so, but you're a child, you grow up, and you just always were reminded or told that there was immigration. Immigration was something to fear. So somewhere around the time that I was about 10 years old, I remember going to school and then coming home and then finding out that my mom had been picked up in a factory raid at a garment factory, and that my mom had been picked up, that my uncle and my aunts had also been picked up, and they had been taken away by immigration, which is, I was the oldest daughter. And to me, it was that fear that you were always being told about had suddenly come to our home. And I just remember my father being really worried and just telling me that I had to be strong and I had to take care of my brother and my sister. I had a brother who had been born in the U.S.
How old were your siblings at the time?
So if I was about 10, my sister was about 9, maybe my brother, maybe 7 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And so we were, and so this is what happened. And I just remember very much to this day, I still remember my dad just being very scared. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't seen my dad scared. I had seen, your father is the person who takes care of you. Yes. And so I just remember how scared he was and worried. And not just for my mom, but it was his sister had been picked up in that raid as well. And my uncle, everybody who lived with us actually. So that was just, and I remember thinking as a child, why does this happen to us? Well, fast forward, my mother came back, but my dad went to an organization to figure out, what to do with my family. Later, actually, in looking at all our paperwork and our old papers, I found out that he had gone to an organization called the International Institute to find out how we could actually legalize. And there it was that he found out that the law had just barely changed, but my parents could actually legalize their status because of my brother. This was before the 86 amnesty, and so they were able to legalize their status for the well-being of my brother who had been born in the United States. But with that, my sister and I were also able to legalize our status, and that changed our lives. And I would just add the other thing, my uncle, my aunts, and everybody else were able to legalize in 1986 with amnesty. So I have an experience of what it is to be undocumented, but then how your world changes when you're finally able to be protected and to have some level of legal status. And that was just the story of our family. So we legalized, but so many of our other family members kept coming. We were a place, my father was a very welcoming man who would open up our home to our cousins and our aunts. And sometimes as a teenager, even thinking, can I ever have my own room? I mean, I'm always sharing it with everybody. But so then I really felt my parents sacrificed a lot. I went to college. I found out that's where I really realized, hey, this is not just about our family. But then I started understanding our history of the United States, and also realizing that immigration laws impacted us all, in a sense, but certainly that there were more families like myself. I met friends who were in college who didn't have legal status yet. So CHIRLA was a place, to volunteer. And, I had plans to do my master's at Yale and get a master's in international relations working on immigration matters. But this was in the beginning of the fight back against Proposition 187. And I just felt in that year, I had taken a deferment from my master's, and I was going, I'll volunteer at CHIRLA. And that moment I realized, really, I need to be here.
Yeah.
And so I made a choice to stay, and I've been there for 24 years.
Good for you.
And that's how I got connected. And the organization was founded actually during the amnesty, when my uncles and aunts were able to legalize their status. And the organization was expressly founded to advance the human and the civil rights of immigrants and refugees, and to advance laws and policies that actually support our communities and allow them to thrive.
That's an amazing story.
And I'm sure for you, it probably struck another chord because it was an organization that helped your dad understand their rights, his rights, and what actions he could have taken legally to legalize. Actually, I don't know if it's the word legalize, but to document, to have proper documentation to be in the United States, correct?
Well, the International Institute, the organization that my parents went to for help, or my father went to for help, was a founding organization of CHIRLA.
Wow. Oh,
wow.
So they were they were on the board. At that time, I think the executive director, Steve Voss, was on the board of CHIRLA. So he was part of the founding of the organization that I now work for very proudly. And so I just think it's my way of also, just really recognizing how important these organizations are to families. It was certainly for my family, but I know that every day at CHIRLA we're supporting people like my father and my mom. And I think the other thing that we're really proud at CHIRLA in doing is that we're also supporting the leadership of the youngest of our immigrants, right? Our immigrant youth. And so over all these years, I've seen incredible young people who started at high school, who then went on to become incredibly active in college as professionals. Many of them are working as directors of the organization. And so the organization has grown significantly. We used to only be in Los Angeles. Now we're across the state of California. We have a significant national presence. And I think that's all towards the end of making sure that we win. Just like we've changed policies in California so that when I started, California was an anti-immigrant state. Now it's a pro-immigrant state, considered a model for the rest of the nation. Awesome. But we still have a long way to go at the national level. And so we have to keep fighting because we deserve better. We deserve so much more in this country, our country.
That's so crazy that what you just said, I didn't really realize that before California used to be an anti-immigrant state. When we moved here 25 years ago, and as well, we were undocumented for a while. And I remember my parents also being scared of La Migra all the time, right? So you grow up with this fear, and it's how much it's changed in the last 20 years, where now California embraces everybody, and I always say that we live in California, we live in this little bubble, because it's very different from other places that we've visited. But the change has been incredible in this time.
And I think it wasn't automatic. It was actually because after the passage of Proposition 187, it was a very intentional, real campaign to make sure that if you were a legal permanent resident, you had gotten amnesty in the 80s. Maybe you're still a green card holder. Hey, become a citizen. We need you to vote. That's what my mom became a citizen. So imagine my mom came undocumented, was deported, came back, was able to legalize her status, and had a green card. And then in the mid-90s, after the passage of 187, she really is like, no, we all have to become citizens. Right. And my mom and my aunt, who had been at that point picked up at the garment factory, both of them have been citizens since that time, and they don't miss an election. I mean, I don't think they've ever not voted. And so I just think that it's because of that intentional power building in our communities that we make change possible. There's a lot of good things that have happened in California, and I can just name a couple. We have driver's license. More than 1 million people have a driver's license if they're undocumented. We have our youth who are able to be considered residents for purposes of tuition in their colleges, but they also have access to California financial aid. And that financial aid is available to them from college, from their B, if they want to go through their BA. And then just this year, now it's available if you want to utilize it for graduate school.
That's amazing.
And so those are some of the things that have changed. Healthcare for children who are undocumented. The whole purpose of Proposition 187 was to take away safety net and education for children. And here we go, fast forward 25 years later, and we have healthcare for all. It's not yet for all. It's only for children, but
under what age?
Under 26. So the governor had just made it possible for anybody under 26 can have access to healthcare. Right now, I mean, a lot of a big campaign is happening right now in order to get our elderly also able to get access to beyond emergency care here in California. So that's next year. That's what we're fighting for. But I think that the power building is never taking anything for granted. Yeah. Actually saying it's not only enough to win things, we also have to defend the things we win and sustain them. Yeah. So that means that at CHIRLA, starting in 2004 and onwards, we have a very robust immigrant political power project, which is last year in the 2018 elections, we were able to get out over 250,000 individuals to vote. Wow. Most of them are what people consider low propensity voters, Latinos. Most of them whose native language is Spanish, but they're like my mom and my aunt who, they want to vote, but they need the right information. And then a lot of young people, motivating them to be defenders in their community, and just for us as a community, see the power in our families and the power we have, and to use it to win more good things, but also to defend the things we have.
I think that's 100%. One of the good things that's coming out of this era that we're living in, where things are not as great in a national level, that, like you say, people are coming together. People are like, oh no, we gotta register, we gotta vote, we gotta be more active, we gotta defend what we already, all the few little things we've earned. I think there's always that positive out of all the things that are happening, because if not, I feel like also, not that we get complacent, but we're like, okay, things are going well. We don't have to vote. Things are going. And people don't take action as much as we have. I mean, the little action that I've taken, but now that in a national level, things are not as great as we would like them to be.
Well, it's. I just really say the situation is atrocious for the immigrant community. When I think about the fact that you have women and children who are not being allowed into the United States as asylum seekers, and are actually sent back to the very countries that they're running away from, it makes no sense to me, and it is really just a huge violations of human rights. And I feel like as Latinas, we have to really exercise the power we have.
Yes.
Because really, when I look at these moms, I'm a mom, and I know that they love their little girls and their little boys the same way I do, and so they're just trying to survive, and they're trying to give them a better opportunity, and that we're just neglecting to see their humanity and their just basic need. And the thing about it is, we've been fighting for immigration reform and to change our policies so that they are more just and more humane. What has happened under this administration is that we've taken so many. I mean, it's a monumental step backwards from where we were at the national level. And so, if we were fighting to reform a system prior to this administration, where we are now is so much worse than we were before at the national level. And so I just think it's important for us to note and to be witnesses to what is happening, and if not at the border, inside the United States, just massive raids that are happening. And then I see the young women who are many times left in their homes taking care of children because the mom or the dad had been picked up at a factory raid, like what happened in Mississippi. But what happens here all the time here in Southern California, where you have every day, people are being picked up in their homes. And so we just have to change this. This is not acceptable. And I think it also negates who we are as people, but also who we are as Americans. And so I think the damage of the immigration system is felt is actually creating harm to everybody.
Yes. I 100% agree. I want to talk a little bit about DACA.
Sure.
There are a lot of mom listeners on the who listen to the show. There's a lot of moms who listen to the show and who may have children that are under DACA. And I want to give them a little bit more information and even just, get informed ourselves on what the policy is, and who does it protect or does not protect, and what are we facing today.
Okay. So DACA is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, deferred action from deportation. And so what the Obama administration did was said, come forward. If you come forward and provide us your information, we're going to defer your deportation. But not only that, we're also going to recognize the fact that you grew up here, and you're going to get a work permit. So we'll protect you from deportation. We won't enforce on you, but we will also give you a work permit so that you can exercise your profession. And especially because there was a recognition that many of these young people were actually going to college and were entrepreneurs. They were trying to start their own businesses, and that they really needed that support. So over 800,000 young people came forward and provided that information, and then got the protection from deportation and that work permit. And the program was working fine for over 5 years. Young people could continue to apply. So there wasn't like a cutoff date.
Right.
If you qualified, if you came here before you were 16, and if you were under 32 years of age, if you could demonstrate certain requirements that the government had around your presence in the United States, and also your participation in our school systems, et cetera. And if you could prove all of this, then you would qualify for the program. The program has been supported by all educators in the universities, in our local schools. It's been supported by some of the most important industries in our country, but also companies like your Googles, your Microsoft, and entire association of businesses are in support of this, because this has been an incredible way by which to really increase their talent pool. So the program, again, supported by many, but then during the 2016 election, Donald Trump decided to make it one of his points of his campaign to end DACA. And he even said, well, these are good people, and really qualified the Dreamers as a place where he had a soft part of his heart. But I mean, obviously, he says a lot, but his actions, I feel like they never match, right? What he says. And so in 2017, he ended the program. And he ended the program on September 5th of 2017. and said, okay, I'm no longer going to offer DACA. And so he closed the program for any future individuals who could qualify. So that means that all our high schoolers today don't have access to that protection, and most of them continue to be undocumented. But then for those who had already enrolled in the program, all they could do was renew. And he literally said on September 5th, the program ends and you only have until October 5th to
Wow.
renew your program. So it was madness at
Wow.
CHIRLA. And my hat's off always to our legal department at CHIRLA, because it was nonstop. It was trying to renew as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But thank goodness, we all organized and we went to court and said, no, this is not right. And there were 9 lawsuits around the country, and CHIRLA is part of some of those lawsuits, to stop Donald Trump's decision or rescission of the program. And all the lower courts, they all said he was wrong, that he really was wrong, first because the program was constitutional, and number 2, he was wrong because even in the way he ended it, it was so irresponsible, and that there's certain rules even in ending programs like these, but that he didn't follow them. So now the case has gone all the way to the Supreme Court, and on November 12th, the Supreme Court heard it. And the one thing that we did as CHIRLA was we took action here in Los Angeles, but we also had a delegation that went to the Supreme Court. Yes. And 25 of the DACA-mented folks who went in our delegation were inside the Supreme Court hearing the arguments about their lives. We believe that, on our side, we have the majority of support. I mean, so many associations and industry support this program. There is maximum support at the national level by the American public, but really now the decision is in these 9 justices. And really, to be honest with you, in 1 justice, because we know that the court is divided. So all I have to say to our folks who have DACA who might be listening is, number 1, we're asking you, continue to renew. If you have less than a year on your permit, we're asking you to renew that program, because we don't know how it's going to end. And so we need you to be as protected as possible. So renew. And at CHIRLA, we have free legal services, and we also will support you with the fees for the government. So everything's free at CHIRLA. All you have to do is show up at our main office in downtown Los Angeles before 8 o'clock, and you will be able to be served. And that's before 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesdays, Thursdays, or Saturdays. And all that information's on our website. And then the other thing that I think is important for this show is that when folks enrolled in the DACA program, they were immigrant youth, but now they're immigrant adults. They're immigrants with children. So close to 400,000 U.S. citizen children have parents who are DACA-mented. And so I just think it's so important that we understand that the harm is not just to the individual, but to the family, to these children, and to entire communities. And so that's why we want the program to continue. But overall, our message is that we want a permanent solution.
Yes.
This kind of temporary program just doesn't work. What we need is a just and humane immigration reform that transforms our system so that it allows people to come in legally, where people don't live in fear, where they're protected in the workplace and in society, but that also you're allowed to be a human being and to be able to thrive and continue to contribute.
Wow. I have all sorts of mixed feelings listening to you. I kind of wanted to cry at some point, because it's so, sometimes people don't really pay attention to what you're saying. It's not only the individual, but the community, us as a group, everybody. And it just, I don't know, it makes me so angry at some points, everything that's happening. So I want you to tell us, how can we help? How can the listeners, how can we personally, how can people help make a change? I know that there's many ways, like actions that people can actually take to help and support and this fight. We know a lot of people that are DACA. Gavi, from Camila Creative that works with us, she went to,
she was one of the
people that went. And so we know that a lot of these people are people that have so many, that are so talented, so intelligent, that contribute so much, that the idea that people have of us as immigrants, it's wrong, completely wrong. So I just want to know, how can we help?
Well, number one is on all fronts, on the DACA front, the decision might be coming in January, March, or June. So what we're asking everybody is to be very vigilant about what the decision is. And hopefully we'll be able, because of all our work, celebrate that the program continues. But if the program is ended, we need to all rally behind the DACA-mented and push for a permanent solution. So if this program ends, we're going to push full force ahead in really demanding a permanent solution from Congress. So already in the House of Representatives, we already passed H.R. 6, which is the Dream and Promise Act. And so this is legislation that would make the DACA-mented permanent residents in the United States. It would also support individuals who have TPS, because this is another group of people that this president has taken away their legal status and just recently has renewed them. But again, it's a temporary program. This would offer a permanent solution. So we're going to be calling on Mitch McConnell to actually allow for a vote on the Dream, because they always talk, a good talk about, how much they support, these young people. But then when we're really, when it comes to, are you actually going to allow a vote? They don't do anything.
Yeah.
So we need to push them. We need to take action in the elections, because we do not deserve this president. We don't deserve all these individuals who have rallied behind him. This is not the government we deserve. So we have to fight for what we do. So I'm asking everybody who's listening, please register to vote. Please participate in these elections. It matters so much. Lives are at stake. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying lives are at stake. And so I need you to participate in that way. And then I need you to join us at CHIRLA. Become a member of CHIRLA. You can become a member at an annual $25 membership. What does that do? It allows us to continue to provide the kind of services, but you can also donate. We have a program right now for it's called the DACA Trust Fund. So you can also donate for $195, which is the $495 that we are able to cover the fees for the government for DACA-mented. So you can donate and support. So it's that action that says, both in terms of becoming a member and participating in activities. Many of these young people who flew with us to Washington, D.C. had become members, and they really wanted to have a say. And so we offer those kind of opportunities to advocate on your own behalf. And then the other part is, I also think that people need to understand how important supporting this program or organizations like CHIRLA is. And so you also have to invest in things that are good for our community. I always say, move money to good things, not to continue in this kind of enforcement and resources for the persecution of immigrants.
Yeah, 100%. I think especially right now during this time of the holidays, everyone's thinking about what to get somebody for Christmas, or what can I buy myself for Christmas, or what can I do? And it's just about always consuming. And we don't, more often than not, we don't think about what can we do for someone else. So maybe for the holidays, instead of buying someone a present, become a member, or buy someone a membership to CHIRLA for Christmas, right? Or $195 to sponsor, in essence, right? That's pretty much you're sponsoring somebody for $195?
Well, you're supporting for $495. You're paying for somebody's fees to the government, so then they can actually stay protected and continue to be able to thrive in their community. I would just say it's important. I really want to say thank you to so many people who have, even on through social media, it's their birthday and they say, okay, don't give me presents, give them, donate to CHIRLA. I have to just say that the other thing about this moment is also that you see how compassionate people are, and how willing they are to also think about, what can I do? And so that, I think, is the other part of what is happening in this time. As much as you see the ugliness and the mean-spiritedness of the government, you also see I've seen people who are like, we want to have an action in front of the detention center because we don't agree, and they bring their children, and the people who are in many of these actions are people who come from different parts of Los Angeles. They're of different races and genders and sexual orientations, and I think that kind of solidarity is really I would say inspiring.
Yes.
And it also, I think helps, at least my staff, they are working so hard. They are dealing with people day in and day out, and they're listening to their stories, trying to help them in some of the most difficult moments in their lives. And so seeing so much support really continues to motivate them, because
Right.
it just really says we're not in this by ourselves, and maybe we don't see the people who are behind us, but we see their support, whether it's through donations or through volunteerism or becoming members.
Yeah. And also, I think this feeling of helplessness, for me anyway, it comes knowing that no one really votes on the Supreme Court appointees, right? Mm-hmm. You can't really vote on who goes into office, and we can't lobby them, and we can't just call them up in their office. So out of this, what can like a normal person like my sister and I, like, how can we influence this decision to this particular individual? Or do you know of any specific ways that we can, like, what can we do to kind of pivot that vote into a yes?
What I want to say is right now the Supreme Court is moving. I feel like we've lifted up the stories. What you were doing today, inviting me, I'm so happy to be here, to just allow for this platform to be able to send the message. But I'm asking everybody. We're going to have a primary here in California. This is the earliest primary, so election day is March 3rd of 2020. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it is about growing the political power of our community. Mm. So I'm asking everybody, this is something we can do right away. And so make sure that you're ready to voice your opinion in the ballot box. The other thing that I would say, we can't, directly lobby the Supreme Court. We've kind of continued to provide positive stories out there because they read the newspaper. So it's really important for us to continue to tell the story of who the DACA-mented are, and because we need to continue to influence them from now until June if they decide to make a decision in June. But I will say that we do want the Senate, and that's Mitch McConnell. And he's the reason that a lot of people aren't getting votes on positive things. There's a lot of good legislation that passed the House of Representatives. He needs to feel pressure. He needs to understand that people are paying attention, and that actually it's important for him to understand that that his decision not to take action, because this is what he's doing. He is not taking votes on anything positive. So the Senate has become the place where anything dies because no votes are happening there.
Right.
So we need to push the Senate to take action.
And is this just like a phone call? Should we just text them or what?
No. Well, I would say I'm sure that most of your folks are actually use Twitter.
Yeah.
So I would say, get to his Twitter handle and then send as many messages as you can. It's super simple. Most politicians use Twitter, so I know that in many instances we'd say, do a phone call. Now they're paying attention to kind of what's the traffic in their Twitter, on their Twitter handles, and so we need to tell them, you need to support the immigrant community. You need to support the DACA-mented. We need a permanent solution. So I would say that that's a way to engage, and we will continue to be in relationships so that I will send you information as soon as we know what the decision is. We will let you know. But right now,
we can also light a candle.
Well, I always say positive energy, right? You have energy, positive energy. That's who we are, and this is where I think.
Dame su nombre.
No, and it's.
I'm putting
to be honest with you, I always think, hey, we need to bring all the positivity, and also I also say this is like learn from our ancestors. Yeah. And also to say, we are the children of our ancestors who have struggled in this country and outside of this country for their liberation 100%. And just to exist. And so we have all that. So we have to just use that in order to live free in this country. So the more we're able to talk about this and we don't keep it hidden, the more that I think things can change. I
Yeah,
really
it's
do
true.
believe in the power of our people.
Yeah.
Like
me
they
too.
say, we didn't cross the country crossed us.
Ah, thank you so much, Angelica.
Oh,
It
it's
was
been a
such a
pleasure.
pleasure to have you here. Thank you for educating us and inspiring us to create change in this, it's still a wonderful country. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It was so much fun.